Welcome back, dear friends. It's ever such an exciting session video today, or over the next few days, because it's time to look at the person sensor, that most amazing sensor that I discovered and have been ranting about for ages. I'm now ready to start working out how to install it and how to try and get it to move Victoria so that she watches you, or watches people as they come and observe her singing. Let me show you what I've been up to. So just a quick recap. There's the ukulele playing machine, and that plays the ukulele when I'm singing Windows currently. That is going to be connected, or is connected, via this lovely flexible antique shower hose containing lots of electrotrickery to Victoria the singing automaton in her new home. Now there are two speakers hidden behind this lovely napkin fabric, and all her works and things down here, and 5 servo motors spread liberally around everything to get her head to move up and down, left and right, and her eyes to open and close and look left and right as well. And there's also a solenoid in her mouth to open and close that so she can sing. So that's where we've got to. And let's talk person sensor. Right, here is the person sensor, or the back of it. The most amazing thing. It's not new technology, because if you've got a digital camera and you point it at a group of people to take a portrait or something, it'll produce lots and lots of rectangles around all the heads so it knows where to focus. So the technology is very well established, but no one until fairly recently has thought to put it all onto one little sensor board. So there's a camera, aha, there's the camera, ever so small, video camera, connected to a processor, so it does all of the facial recognition on the board itself. And the Arduino or Teensy or whatever you're connecting to it just has to read it and see what values, where the faces are, if there are any, and if they're facing in the right direction. So that's the idea behind it. And I needed to work out how on earth to get this somehow mounted onto her house. Originally I was thinking, well, she could have, as was common in Victorian times, well, fairly common, this sort of fortune tellers might have had some sort of bit of jewellery, like a jewel in the middle of her forehead, but, you know, and then someone very kindly pointed out, well, if she had a hat on or something, it could be there, or a tiara. Thought about that, and then I just thought, let's try and keep it simple. I've had so many problems with this hair, not knowing very much about hair myself, if anything. It took me 5 minutes to work out, and I still don't know whether I've got it right, whether that wig is in fact the right way around or not. I haven't got a clue. So I thought, nah, perhaps not. So then I thought signage, and whilst on holiday, thought, let's design a sign. And signs are fascinating things, because you think, oh yeah, that would be great fun, just design a sign. But they're something that takes an awful lot of effort and time to get just right. If you get it right, people think, yeah, well, that's right, so that must be easy. You know, it's like any sort of design thing. If it looks wrong, people think, no, that's just not right. So I'm hoping I've got this right. Can you spot where the camera is going to go? It's going to go, look, there's a little hole. We have this, and we have the camera poking through the lens, and on the back we have that sitting rather a pleasant little, I don't know whether you can see that, where's the light gone? There we are, little stepped enclosure with a back to go on it, and I've engraved it as well in the end. Look at this, here's the engraved one. I think it's going to work. I don't think that's going to be that noticeable, especially when it's lined up with the actual lens. Now I've decided to mount it up here. There we are, something like that. As with all these signs and things, luckily with the CAD software, basic though it is, it allows me just to try positioning different signs in different positions, just what looks right. So something like that seems to look right, and I'm going to mount it on, look, you see all this hair. Oh, another problem with my flyaway hair, it gets caught on every voltage regulator possible. I've got to mount it on 2 brass rods either side, and then have a little copper pipe fixed in the middle to take the wires down inside. That Victoria will constantly be looking for people. looking at her, and if she sees someone, a face, she will then look up the one, and it also gives you a percentage of how the likelihood that it is a face. So it seems to be very good, but until we get it rigged up I won't really know. So she will then look at whoever it is, and I've been trying to work out, okay, eyes, because when you have a face and you have eyes, obviously, looking at stuff, you sort of glance over if you see something suddenly new, and then if it stays there and you want to look at it, then you move your whole head and your eyes go back to the centre. I have studied this for some time whilst walking the dog. So I hope it won't be too big a problem to get it looking realistic. Sees a new face, or the position of the face changes, glances over or up or whatever with her eyes, and then if the face stays there for say more than a second or 2 seconds, then her eyes return to the centre and her whole head moves. Can't wait to try this out. It is so exciting. You know how much I love modelling real life with software and things. So that's going to be so exciting. Right, I really must stop talking. Verbal diarrhea. I will get this connected and I'll get back to you. It's amazing when things like this come down to 0.5 millimetre increments and things. I've experimented from both sides, the gap that needs to be there, and it's 7.5 millimetres. Any smaller it just looks wrong from the other side, any bigger it looks wrong. It's nuts, isn't it? And also when I was designing it, I was experimenting with the tops of these brass bits, how much should show, because I've got lovely little brass balls, and I thought, well, that would be nice because I'd use them on the Is It Time for Tea machine. There's that sign, and you can see there's hexagonal rod, brass rod, little ball on top, and the curve in it, and that just looked right. But again, that took ages to design and experiment with to get something that just worked. But it's all fixed down now and horizontal. The back's on and the cables go down there, and that looks very nice. And I've got to extend the tape cables. In fact, let's just show you what it looks like from the working side. Right, so I know it's got the light background of the drawer. Let's move down so you can, it's a bit darker between, but I think that looks great. I'm happy with that. But you can't really see the camera lens unless you're looking for it, which I am. So I'll get that wired up. I have to say, I do like the construction of this. It is so handy. It's closed up, obviously not screwed together, but it doesn't matter. It's stable. Open it up and you've got access to all the metricry and bits. Oh, the other thing was, I said, one of the last comments in the last video, I was having real problems because whenever I switched her on, all the servos would jump to their extremities and her eyes would be rolling all around in her head and the mechanisms could get damaged and everything else. So I need to stop that. In the end, and thank you to all those people who wrote suggestions, and in the end I ended up doing what they'd suggested really, because I realised I had two Darlington pairs, one either side of this heatsink, which you probably can't see because it's very dark. One to switch on the body motor that drives all the mechanisms on here, and the other one to, what's the other one for? The other one's for the mouth solenoid. It takes about an amp at 5 volts. And I used this heatsink just because it's one I had, a very limited number, and they're all like this. You can mount one transistor on the side. Then I was searching for another output from the Teensy that was free that I could use to power up all the servo motors, the 5 servo motors that are situated around. So Teensy starts up. Once it's settled and is happy, it then starts everything else up. Can you see where we're going with this? Well, I checked on the Teensy pin out and also all the pins that were needed for the audio board and SD card, and there were none free. But eventually, very slowly, at a snail's pace, I realised that in fact when she's needed to come to life, her body motor starts up. So why not use that? That can also power up all the servos as well. Oh, it was manna from heaven, just realising I'd already got that. And in fact I already had a Darlington pair transistor connected to it with a heatsink. It's brilliant. So here's the circuit. I drew it out just because I was concerned about having a little 3.3 voltage regulator to drive the body motor separately, and because it's all going to be switched via, there's the Darlington pair transistor, so everything's connected all the time to plus 5 volts, and then it switches it and connects to ground, which is a far more efficient way of doing it. I've got a anti-flyback diode to stop the big pulse you get when you switch electricity off from an inductive load like a motor, or in fact a solenoid, very good example. I've got the relay that switches the 5 volts to all the servo motors, and I've got the little voltage regulator, that. And I realised that it doesn't matter, these are both connected up together, so when the ground isn't connected, nothing's happening. It's not like the voltage regulator's connected and its ground isn't for reference, because then it would just pass 5 volts. So that's not a problem. So, and then I just built this extra little board here with a relay and the little voltage regulator connected up, very few surprisingly wires, and it works. Fantastic. Well, it's all compiled properly, very exciting, with the person sensor library. So I've got it all wired up, and it is coming, I don't know whether you can see that, it is actually coming up with readings as I move around. Now, what would be lovely, and I don't know how to do this, would be to have it presented as a series of little rectangles on a screen. But I think I'm going to have to go straight into for the plunge. If it's writing out the coordinates on a grid 255 by 255, I'm going to try and map that to Victoria's available movement and just give me an idea of what it's doing. But the great thing is the I2C communication is working. It's also seeing what's going on in there, so something's happening. Not quite sure what yet, but I'm very pleased. The hardware is working, so that's step one. Now I need to get my brain around the software. Well, I tried connecting it all up and it didn't work. I'm not sure quite what it was doing. Obviously something is not right. So what I'm doing now is I'm trying to analyse properly the output that the camera is providing, and I'm doing that like so. That's what the instructions for the person sensor say. So what I'm doing is I'm getting it to look at me, and then I am getting it to serial print the results. I'm putting them in a box. I've only done one so far, but I've got like a 10-second delay after it starts up, so I can move my head, pose nicely somewhere, and then get it to record me. I wish it would stop doing that. There. And then I've got this on Excel. So there's the 255 box, and that's what it's seen so far. Now that was with me sitting on the left hand side, so this is what she sees. So I'm going to stand up in the middle, sit down in the middle, left, right, and try and work out, because there's something not right. I need to identify. I haven't used one of these before. These very exciting things. So I need to establish that this is working and I do understand what it's outputting. I'll get back to you when I've got some more pretty pictures drawn up. Well, that's interesting. I found out what the problem was, having tried all sorts of the normal turn everything into integers, because I've probably made a stupid mistake somewhere, but I hadn't. Amazingly, shock horror. What I discovered was, thanks to this lovely little potentiometer that I decided to actually fix permanently to that analog input pin so I could check readings and results, I discovered that rather than her head being 90 at the top, 98 in the middle and 103 at the bottom, I don't know where I got these numbers, perhaps I just plucked them straight out of thin air. It's actually 73 to 121 and 177. That's better, because she was starting to move a little bit, make a little bit of twitching effort. The other thing is, I've realised, with her hair on, it's so heavy that if she looks up too much, she won't ever look down again. In fact, she's not, oh yeah, sort of, yeah. I'd forgotten just how heavy her hair was, so I might have to put some lead weights in her nose or something, I don't know. Anyway, we'll put the new figures in and see if it makes any more sense whatsoever. This is absolutely bonkers. She's following me. When I crouch down, she should look down unless her hair's weighing her down too much, which it might be. I'll stand up a bit higher. And then if I walk back over here, still a little bit of work to do. Camera's on, so it's all going not so well. But come on, you did it just now. Oh, you get the idea. There's something going on. We're sort of we're sort of getting there. She keeps wanting to look over to the right, and I can't work out why. Then, look who's sitting there. I wonder if she can see her sister, Florence, Music Time for Tea Machine, or the very unfortunate other sister we don't talk about anymore. I wonder if that's why. I'll put a cloth over her as this moment and see if she starts following me instead. Just trying something else. There's the box, the confidence. There's a percentage of how, if it thinks how closely it resembles a face, whatever it's seen. I did have it at 80, but I've turned it down to 20. Also, I've switched off the return if it suggests the face isn't facing front. So it's more likely to pick up a face. Let's upload that and see what effect. I mean, this is the joy of Arduinos and Teensies and things on Raspberry Pis, I'm sure. You can just fiddle around, click upload, and then see what they do. So let's see what that does then. So it's uploading. I've also drawn the curtains to stop. Right, has she seen me? Let's walk back round here. That's not bad, is it? I'm just being very sort of, I mean, that is pretty amazing. It's another day and I've got sidetracked. I could carry on programming it, but the thing is, I want to add a switch onto the ukulele playing machine. Let me show you why. At the moment, all of the power, electricity for Victoria, comes from the power supply. I've yet to get round to buying one of those sort of computer style ones. 12 volts DC into the machine, through the machine. That takes what it needs from the 12 volts and sends the remainder down this pipe into the back of her. Now, one of the functions of the ukulele playing machine requires these 4 stepper motors, as if you remember, if you watched previous videos, the biggest ones I've ever used, to move the fret sliders up and down. And because of the way they're set up, they've got 4 magnets in them, electromagnets if you like, but you can, the drivers I'm using, which are incredibly small clever things, can be set to trick them. I know it's not trick, but basically control exactly how much electricity goes to each of the 4 each of the 4 coils inside. So it can actually be as though they had 16 steps rather than whatever many steps they started with, or even 32 steps, I can't remember. But what I'm trying to get to, and I'll get there in the end, is that if you switch the power off to them at any time, and that's what I was doing, I was having them playing the tune, and once they'd finished, to cut down on the current that's required, to switch them all off, in effect disconnect them. But then what I realised, of course, was they may have been at some of these intermediate positions, and then you switch them back on to play the tune again, and what it was meaning was they were slightly drifting out of tune because they were forgetting where they were, and there's no way around that. So to get to the point, I need to leave the power on all the time to these. So if it's hardwired inside, while I'm sitting here fiddling and farting about with Victoria, all these servo motors are drawing about 2 amps between them. And I don't want that, and it meaning that the things inside are getting hot, the drivers and all sorts of other stuff. So I'm going to add a button, and the button is going to be called Fret Disable. So when you press it, it switches off the power to all the motors on the fret. And talking of sign design, as we weren't, I think that is the quickest label I have ever designed. It took me about 5 or 10 minutes. I'm very pleased, because the knob I've got is that. These are very common click switches, and some time ago, I think I might have mentioned it, I was going to use this for this machine for something else, and got this wooden ball, drilled a hole in it and pushed it on the end, and that looks really nice. So that's going to be the actual switch, the button. So now I'm just working out where to mount that, because that'll mean that I can leave all this switched on, but I can just easily, without having to rewrite the code every time, I can easily just switch off the power to those if I need to. I'm just gluing together a little support for the switch that's going to sit over there. That's lovely. Excellent. And whilst that's drying, look! I remember ranting and wittering on about these bulbs in the past. I think it was for the steampunk truck cab clock thing. They are amazing. They are so realistic. You can sometimes, every so often, you can see a flame actually leaves the top. That's better. I've turned down the brightness. It's just lovely, absolutely beautiful. So I'm going to, that's 12 volts. So I'm going to put that behind a window, similar to this one actually. I don't know what that will look like if I hold that over. Well, you can see you do get the flickery effect. I actually built one into the side of the Is It Time for Tea machine there, which, where's my finger gone? There it is. Which did look wonderful. The only thing was it was causing all sorts of interference with the audio, so I had to disconnect it in the end. That was a different type though. Voila, as they say in the trade. Look! Fret disabled, brilliant! So it's like an emergency stop switch for it. I'm really pleased with that. It's the first time I've made a switch like that. Right, I've got that. Pushy thing. Wired up to that, which is great. I just feel like making stuff at the moment, so I had this idea about illuminating her. Because if you with these shell lamps, because if you remember I did it with illuminated Florence the automaton with 2 of the shell lamps. In fact, that was why I originally started making them, and that looks really nice. But the problem is, you see, I'll put them down here, they're not going to illuminate anything because her face is actually sticking further forward. So what I thought I'd do possibly is to mount them on little bits of copper pipe that could then hinge out to the right position. So I'm just experimenting with what looks right. I'd be very grateful if you could let me know whether, because I can't decide whether to have lamps, the shell lamps on the front of Victoria or not. I reckon that's about enough for another video. Sadly, I was going to end with a nice little short video of her watching me and following the camera around and things like that. But, damn it, Janet, I've managed to destroy my first Teensy. What a pain. So close, yet so far. I was about to finally coordinate or calibrate her singing with the ukulele machine starting to play. And I was going to go and plug the laptop in, the USB to this, to supply voltage to the Teensy, which is what I've been doing. There is a 5 volt input with a little built-in regulator, but it states that it's a very, very bad idea to try and use both at the same time. So I thought, okay, let's get a USB-C plug, or an old bit of wire with one, a connector, cut this off, connect it to positive and ground, plug in, Bob's your uncle. If I want to program it, unplug that, plug the USB back in. So I dutifully found one. Here's the other end. I cut it open and there are meant to be 4 wires inside. Take this as a warning, dear friends, if ever faced with this problem. There are meant to be 4 wires. There's the 2 data connections and a positive 5 volts and a ground, 0 volts. But there are only 2 wires in this, and I thought, that's odd. The only reason I can think they'd do that is if it was a charger for some device. And I thought, well, that's okay. So I plugged this to a USB adapter, got my multimeter out and found, indeed, the red was plus 5 volts, the white was 0. You'd think it was a fair bet to assume that the other end was wired up right. I think it isn't. I think that this, I mean, it should be red and black theoretically if it was normal colour cards. I think this is, I can't imagine someone's gone to the trouble of making one of these that just destroys things that it's plugged into. But I reckon they don't go to the normal pins, and as soon as I plugged this in, it just destroyed important parts of the Teensy. So I've ordered another one. Interesting thing is, when I switch this on, the only thing that works, she continues to blink. So that tells me that all the setup in the sketch on the Teensy is working. It's connecting the servos, it's timing, it's doing all that, it's working the blinking, but the ukulele machine can no longer control it, which suggests that in fact the serial interface on the Teensy is completely ruined. And also it's not getting any information from the person sensor. So I think the communication systems are down. I really don't know what I'm talking about, but you know, having walked in the park with a dog several times since this happened, I've ordered another one, as I say. Hopefully it'll arrive today. I'll get it soldered in, fingers crossed. How frustrating. So let that be a warning to you, dear friends. Use a proper USB lead or whatever else. Thanks very much for watching. Hope to see you next time. Please remember to click subscribe, the like button and the bell. If you've got any questions, please put them in the comments. Next time, it's hopefully going to get her working and calibrated with the singing and some other bits and pieces. So hope to see you then. Thanks again.